So the green movement worldwide is now just a manipulation.
Yes.
Of now it's been proposed time and again too that big business is behind things like this, and that would represent a capitalist approach. But what you're saying is we're heading toward a socialist approach based on this scenario.
You have to understand the difference between capitalism, socialism, communism, what all of these things really mean. You have to understand that what the difference is between right wing and left wing. People, they use these phrases all the time, and they don't even know what these things mean. And it's just incredible to me to hear a socialist calling someone else a Nazi. Because Nazi means National Socialism. So here's a socialist calling a right-wing guy a Nazi, when what he should be calling the right-wing guy is anarchist. People on the right want no control. Mm-hmm. They're really anarchists.
So they would, in theory then, or in fact, be in opposition to this ultimate movement.
Yes.
Whereas in appearance, they would be the ones behind it.
Well, when you have a misunderstanding of what the terms mean, yes.
Okay.
Right wing, on the far right, is total anarchy. They don't want anybody controlling anything that they do, and they believe that people are responsible enough that the world can exist without government.
Okay.
Or the very minimal government that it would take to. On the far left, on the other hand, they believe that the government should be in total control and should be supply man with all of his needs.
Well, creating a whole society that's dependent.
Right. A republic is somewhere in the middle. It's governance by laws. Laws are decided by representatives who are elected by the people. And according to the theory, the representatives will do what is right, whether they get elected or not, because it's not really a democracy. A democracy is far left. People don't understand. We don't live in a democracy. This country is not a democracy. It is a republic. A democracy is ruled by the mob. The mob always votes themselves every kind of benefit that they can vote themselves. And whenever you do that, it means large, tremendously overpowering government in control.
They vote themselves into dependency.
That's it. They vote themselves into a dictatorship is what they do, where they lose all of the benefits that they intended to vote themselves into in the first place.
Okay.
And democracies are extremely dangerous to minorities, because if the majority of people don't like you,
right,
they're going to vote that they kill you, and they can, that's it. Democracies are dangerous. Democracies are socialists. Democracies are communism. That's what communism is. The definition of communism is everybody doing according to their talents and receiving according to their need. And it doesn't work. We already know it doesn't work. Man, by his inherent nature, is greedy. So those at the top always end up having everything, and those at the bottom end up having nothing in communism. Socialism is different. Socialism usually ends up in a dictatorship, in a very controlling dictatorial government which even owns the people that it governs, so that those who live in fear of not having are provided for what they need, and in turn they worship this oppressive government. Socialists are children who went out into the world, took a look around and said, I can't handle it, and went home to Daddy.
Okay.
Daddy, protect me. Daddy, feed me. Daddy, loan me your car. Daddy, tuck me in at night. Socialists are scared little children who are irresponsible, can't stand on their own 2 feet, and need Daddy to take care of them.
Okay.
Okay?
Now we got the...
But what happens when you go home to Daddy and Daddy does all these things for you? Tell me.
Well, you never leave the home. You've got no reason to. In other words, if you're being provided for in that way.
You're being provided for, but what does it mean? Doesn't it mean that you have to do what Daddy tells you to do?
True.
Doesn't it mean you have to be in when Daddy tells you to be in? Doesn't it mean that you can't drive the car to the next town if Daddy tells you you can't? Doesn't it mean that if Daddy tells you to take out the trash, you better take out the trash? Are you beginning to understand the concept? When you ask for favors from Daddy, you have to give up freedom in return.
Right. Okay.
So socialism always leads to repression of liberty, freedom, equality, all of those things fly out the window so that you can have free health care, so that you can have a place to live but you don't have to pay the rent, so that you can have food given to you by the state. And that's where we're headed. Right in this country right now, we're almost totally socialist, and now people are screaming for a national health care policy.
Right.
Health care insurance.
Now, the other aspect, once again, I'd like to go into is the anarchy or the right wing, which we just into that similar.
Anarchists believe that they can be responsible, that they won't hurt other people,
Okay.
that your freedom never ends until it begins to infringe upon someone else's freedom, and that no one should have any control over that there should be no speed limits on the highways. The problem is that, again, just like on the socialist side, you have people over here that are human, and human condition means that ultimately somebody's not going to be responsible, that they're going to drive too fast when they've had too much to drink, and they're going to kill innocent people. The answer is a balance. You know, the law of the universe says this. It's a law of physics, really, and everybody can understand it. For every action, there is an equal but opposite reaction. There can be no good unless there is evil. There can be no man without a woman. You understand the concept?
Based on that, the theory of a utopia here on Earth is corrupt right away.
Absolutely.
It goes against the laws of physics.
It goes against the law of the universe that there must be two opposing forces all the time in every instance, because that's what makes the universe work. That's what makes everything work. What we need to do is stop trying to go way over here and establish some utopia of freedoms, or way over here to establish some repression of freedom so that we make sure that we got something on the table to eat. And strike a balance between the two that works. And stop withholding information. What makes it difficult for anyone to succeed or live, or for us to really come together and have peace in this world, are all of these people who think that they are the guardians of the secrets of the ages, and have only them have truly mature minds, so only them are worthy of knowing the secrets and the real science and the real metaphysics and all of these things. So they repress it and they keep it secret, so the rest of us live out our lives and we don't know the truth of what life is really all about. Therefore, we're always stumbling over each other and getting in each other's way and doing the things that we profess that we don't want to do, simply because we don't have access to the truth. If we had access to the truth... Now, I got to tell you this. Back when these men first began establishing these societies, these mystery schools, and suppressing information, the common man was uneducated, did not have an intellect capable of understanding these secrets. They were really beasts of burden, for the most part, and they lived their whole life in toil.
Right.
But things are not that way now. Most people have a good education. They have a good mind. They're capable of understanding if they're taught, and if they're taught correctly. And I think it's time to teach people what the truth is, and quit hiding it, so that we can come together as one humanity and make a balance and live together in a balance. You know, evil's never going to disappear, neither is good. But we can maintain a balance, and life can be good. Instead of swinging back in this tremendous battle between these two opposing, radical, extreme ends of the scale. That's got to stop. I've never understood why somebody would join together in this band of people and call himself a Democrat and not vote for anybody else if they're not a Democrat. That concept is beyond my understanding. And Republicans and Libertarians and Populists and Communists and Socialists and this and that, and blacks and whites and Indians, and there are so many sects and groups and segments, and we're so fragmented that getting together is going to really be difficult. But we've got to do it. Because if we don't wake up and do it ourselves, these men who meet in secret and plot the manipulations are going to do it whether we want it or not, and they're going to do it at the point of a gun. And they're going to take away everybody's freedom because they don't consider us responsible,
capable of having that freedom,
are capable, or even of using our intellect. So they'll put us in shackles and control us and force us to be peaceful. That's what the plan is, and that's what the New World Order is all about.
Well, we've run from UFOs right to this, and at first a person might watch this and say, "Wow, this is really strange." But where we've come down to, based on that beginning, is quite in the realm of common sense.
Well, it's not strange at all. It's what they've been trained all their life, that if they hear these buzzwords, they're listening to some loony idiot talk, and it has no substance to it. Once they get into it, though, and begin to understand that everything is interconnected, it's leading us toward one end, a one-world totalitarian socialist government, and begin to see it coming to pass all around them in their life, and understand that nothing happens by accident. It's been planned for many years. Then they begin to understand that UFOs play a big role in this. Because if they're real, it's the most significant thing that's ever happened in the history of man, and may be the driving force behind locking up the human race. Because how could a UFO land in a place like Macon, Georgia, and somebody who doesn't look like us get out, walk down the street? And I'm not trying to insult the citizens of the state of Georgia. What if they landed in Newark, New Jersey, and got out and walked down the street in a society that kills people because they sit in the wrong seat on a bus?
I'd assume now that they'll know about us.
Of course they will. They probably already know about you if you've been exposing the truth on your show.
Would you assume that our phone lines would be bugged at this point?
I don't know. I doubt it. They don't really consider you to be a threat unless you develop a large political following.
Oh, okay.
So, unless you have a large political following, you're not considered to be a threat to them. Because they figure that the people are too stupid to listen to you anyway. And generally, they're right.
So we're in the process of educating people then.
Yeah.
The best thing.
Education is 60 or 70% of the battle.
Yeah.
Because people automatically begin to do the right things once they learn what the truth is.
They're educated to it.
Hold on. Okay, I got it.
Ready?
Ready. Okay, go ahead.
Let's go back into the Kennedy situation here. Now, the Warren Commission was highly publicized. All the things that went on there. I was shown a videotape just yesterday of was it a Zapruder film?
It is the Zapruder film.
Okay, and it clearly showed to me that a number of things. One in which that the film was obviously tampered with.
Absolutely.
but not tampered with to the point where I couldn't tell that the driver of the limousine was pulling a gun, or what appeared to look like a gun, around his shoulder and shooting President Kennedy in the head. That caused his head to snap back. Did the Warren Commission see this? It seems so.
The Warren Commission never looked at the Zapruder film, ever. So they never saw it. Now, I don't know who testified during the Warren Commission about the Zapruder film, if anybody did. But I do know that later at the investigations of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, that a man was specifically hired as an expert witness to view the Zapruder film and tell the committee what it showed. And that man's name is Robert Groden. He wrote High Treason, which is a bestseller out now on the Kennedy assassination. And he was one of the many so-called technical experts for the making of Oliver Stone's film called JFK. He's also a fake, a fraud, a traitor, a liar. He was hired by the House Select Committee on Assassinations based upon his resume, which says, very simply, that he is the world's foremost #1 photo analyst, which is a lie. He never went to school in photography. He never was a photographer. He never was a photo analyst. And I got to tell you right now that the world's #1 foremost photo analysts are all come out of the military intelligence community, who are trained to interpret high altitude photography and learn what really is there. He never served in that capacity either. He looked at the Zapruder film and he told Congress, he told the committee in testimony, he testified both in written and in verbal form that William Greer never took his hands off the steering wheel. And that's a blatant lie. I mean, anybody can look at the Zapruder film and see that William Greer takes his hands off the steering wheel. And even if you couldn't see it, if they cut out the frames, you can still see that William Greer, if this were the seat of the car, is turned all the way around with his right side against the rear cushion of the front seat, looking directly at President Kennedy in this attitude, and it is a physical impossibility to have both hands on the wheel in that attitude. So we know that Robert Groden, number one, was not who he said he was, had no expertise to be doing the job that he was hired to do. Number two, even if he had no expertise, it is plainly visible in the film that William Greer could not possibly have had both hands on the wheel. So we know that Robert Groden didn't make a mistake. We know that he intentionally lied to deceive Congress and thus the American people. And what's real strange about it is he's been very active in the research community, supposedly exposing the assassination of President Kennedy. But if you look what he does, he is constantly coming up with new theories, supposed new evidence, most of which is fake. And in his book now, High Treason, he makes a statement that Kennedy was probably hit from the front and the rear at the same time. His job is to keep the American people confused and propagate the lie that our government is no good, that it's our government who assassinated John F. Kennedy. And I'm here to tell you, it wasn't our government. It was the secret societies known as the Illuminati, the Knights Templar, the Freemasons, who assassinated John F. Kennedy. And the proof is right there for anybody who wants to see it. William Greer was a Freemason, number one. He was the Secret Service agent who shot Kennedy. Number two, in Dealey Plaza, there's an obelisk, a monument commemorating the location of the first Masonic temple in the state of Texas. Dealey Plaza is on the 33rd parallel, which is one of the sacred numbers in Freemasonry. He was assassinated in a manner that assured the greatest flow of blood, which is called blood atonement, which was practiced by Freemasonry in the early days and supposedly is not practiced now. But in reality is the method of choice of execution, trial and execution by Freemasons. The Bilderberg group that orders his execution is the Supreme World Council of Freemasonry and consists of 39 permanent members, which is 3 times 13, which is also the exact number of men who signed the Constitution, 39. You see, our forefathers were also members of this secret group, and this country was founded to bring about the New World Order. And it's all in the Great Seal of the United States, which was, and that the design of the Great Seal was made law in 1782. It's just absolutely incredible that the American people don't understand that groups of men don't get together and meet in secret and take blood oaths which say that they can be cut open and their heart ripped out of their body and their intestines scattered over the floor if they talk about the secrets. That's not a benevolent fraternity. That's a dangerous group of men. Grown men don't play games like that. They're serious. It's the secret societies who are bringing about the New World Order. They're the ones who killed John F. Kennedy. There's nothing wrong with our Constitution or our Bill of Rights. But Americans are going to be convinced that our government sucks. And that's what all this stuff is all about.
So at the beginning, the founders of this country actually did create what was I guess you could say, an above-board good government basis for a good government.
They gave us every tool to ensure the success. But it was an experiment, you see, because man had always claimed that he could rule himself, but had never been allowed to do that. Even in ancient Rome, they call it a democracy, and the man didn't rule himself. He was ruled by other people who made man think he was ruling himself. But the truth was, a Roman centurion could march down the street and grab anybody they wanted to and make you do whatever they wanted to, or just execute you on the spot. And that was the truth of the matter. Those weren't free people. In the history of the world, there had never been a people who were truly free or who truly ruled themselves until the United States of America was created as a republic by which we ruled ourselves through elected representatives. whom we sent to the State House, either in the States or to Congress, to do it. They also gave us every tool by which we would destroy ourselves if we weren't capable of doing it. The United States and France, the revolution in this country and the revolution in France, were created to bring about governments which would function as the antithesis to the kings and queens of the world and cause them to topple off their thrones. It also gave man a chance to prove once and for all whether he could rule himself or not. And if he could, fine. That would be the New World Order. If he couldn't, they built the tools into the Constitution to allow them to take it away from us. And those tools are the creation of the federal democracy within the boundaries of Washington, D.C., and the right to contract, through which, if we were irresponsible, we would contract to receive rights from that federal democracy and thus, in return, give up our freedom. And that's exactly what's happening. It's exactly what we've done. John F. Kennedy was short-circuiting the New World Order. He had ordered the printing of constitutional money, United States notes, which would have destroyed the Federal Reserve, which is not an agency of the United States government. It's a private corporation owned and operated by the world bankers, controlled by the Illuminati. And its purpose was to destroy the middle class in this country and thus our economy, and throw us at the mercy of the New World Order.
And we see this unfolding now.
You see it unfolding now. You are seeing, and I predicted this well in advance, you are seeing the destruction of the economy of the United States. And it will continue. It will not get better. Downhill from here on out. Unless we nationalize the Federal Reserve, lock up the criminals who own it, cancel the debt, which will then bankrupt the Illuminati, which is exactly what we ought to do, print constitutional money, which cannot be usurped, which cannot lead to our destruction, and go back to what we're supposed to do, and quit contracting for benefits. We're escaping from the laws of nature, and there's a terrible consequence for that.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible consequence. We have to function within the laws of nature. You can't contract for somebody else to keep you alive. You have to be responsible within your life to keep yourself alive.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't do it, then you have to die. That's the law of nature. You see. Kennedy also did a lot of other things. I mean, he was a believer in the Bible. These men who are bringing about the New World Order don't believe in the God of the Bible. They believe in the God of light, Lucifer, the angel of light, who was flung down to the earth and became the Lord of the world. That's their God. That's why everything they do goes against what people know to be the right thing to do. They believe that man was held prisoner by a vindictive, cruel God named Jehovah in the Garden of Eden. And that Lucifer, through his agent Satan, set man free from the bonds of ignorance to which he was chained to the Garden of Eden, and thus brought the gift of intellect, wisdom, to man, and thus is the true benevolent God. And man, with his intellect and his wisdom and his knowledge, will create technology which will elevate man to the position of God. And all this is allegorical. Don't take the story literally, you see, because it's all allegorical. They believe that intellect, reason, is the light, is the true God, is what makes man God. And I'm not going to debate the right or wrongness of that, because who the hell knows? But I can tell you that they pervert whatever it is that might be divine about their philosophy by becoming what they profess to destroy.
To destroy, yes.
And so, in their zeal to bring about the New World Order, they destroyed the political will of the nation when they assassinated John F. Kennedy, which has furthered their goals, because it made a lot of people feel so helpless
right.
that, God, if they can kill the president, Who am I? You know, what can I do? I'm just one lonely, helpless person. So they quit voting. They abdicated their power. And, of course, through agents like Robert Groden and many others, Oliver Stone, they're being convinced that our government sucks, that our government is the problem, that the Constitution doesn't work, that the Bill of Rights aren't real.
We're playing right into their hands, in other words.
We're playing right into their hands because there's nothing wrong with the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or our government.
The people.
You see, it's been infiltrated. And from within, they are eating at the heart of this nation like a cancer, this secret society. They are destroying it. They are subverting it. Our Constitution has not been allowed to work since 1945 and maybe even earlier. And they have been working behind the scenes to bring about a one-world totalitarian socialist government with the Communist Manifesto as its platform through the United Nations, which was created by this nation from an older organization called the League of Nations, which was the original foundation. And at the highest levels of our government, the Constitution's already been scrapped, and they are working under the aegis of the UN Participation Act and the United Nations Charter.
Which says what?
Which says that there are no rights, there are only what you call privileges. And privileges can be granted or taken away at will by the state.
Quite a frightening scenario.
It's a very frightening scenario, and people better wake up to the fact that unless they wake up and do something about it now, there's only going to be one alternative. And that's either take up arms, restore the Constitution, and the blood will run in the streets of America, or reach down and put the shackles around your own feet and march off into slavery peacefully. It's not going to be easy the coming years.
Wow. Now, historically, this may or may not relate, but at least modern world, contemporary world history does not include the stories of Atlantis and Lemuria that go predate. How does that history, and why was that suppressed, or why is it still being suppressed? How might that affect what we are understanding is going on today, or is it related?
Well, I'm not sure if a place called Atlantis or Lemuria ever existed or didn't exist. I don't really know. But I do know that the story that is told about the civilizations that lived there are something that we should listen to, because this whole scene may have played itself out before on this earth. And if you understand the theory, which I believe has been accepted as fact now, of continental drift, there may have been an Atlantis and a Lemuria, which had tremendously developed technologies and societies. And the same scenario that we're playing out now in this great stage called the world may have played itself out over and over again in the past for millennium. In my investigation of the mystery schools, the secret societies that are bringing all this about, that really control everything behind the scenes, I found that this is all about religion. And it's all about a recurring theme that is penetrated and is at the heart of every religion in the world. And that is a creator or a creatress who has a son that is sacrificed and then is resurrected and saves the world or saves humanity. It seems to be an archetype that is within us. And so that you don't go flipping out watching this tape. I'm a Christian. I believe in the teachings of Jesus Christ, even though it may turn out that he may have never lived. The scene, it doesn't matter. When you read his words, and you can go back through history and find these are the same words that were spoken by every Savior that there ever was, are the most beautiful, most profound, most affecting words that have ever been spoken on the face of this earth. And when I get down and almost get to a point of hopelessness, I just go read the Sermon on the Mount. And I come back up again. Because in the end, it's not going to matter whether Jesus ever lived or didn't live. The story is real. And it's within all of us. And it brings us to something within ourselves that is good. But these men don't look at that. They believe that the end justifies the means, that these stories are just stories, and that the real meaning behind it all is that man can transcend his animal state through the realization of intellect and the overcoming of all of his emotions and feelings and morals, guilt, all of these things. And I just can't go along with that because I believe it's our emotions that tell us when we're doing wrong. We feel it within ourselves. And a person without that capacity to feel when they're doing wrong becomes a sociopath, which is someone without a conscience who really believes that the end justifies the means and therefore has no pangs of conscience nor no reluctance to murder someone who gets in their way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's extremely dangerous.
Now, do these people recognize the continuity of life? In other words, you have told me earlier that they're after physical immortality.
They believe that through their technology, man will become God. With the power of reason, through technology, man will himself become God. They will engineer, just like Hitler wanted to do, the super race who will live forever. And the concept is the same, and the men behind it are the same as Hitler was. When they killed John F. Kennedy, it shows you what kind of men they are, because they would not stop to kill anyone who gets in their way. And they've never stopped at it. Their goal, literally, to bring about the New World Order will be to kill approximately 2 billion people before the year 2000. AIDS is one method of doing this. There'll be many more. As they solidify their control, everyone will be given a choice. They'll be presented with a new world religion. They'll be told to renounce Christ, renounce Buddha, renounce Muhammad, join the New World Order, join the New World Religion. If they refuse, they'll be executed. Very simple. And it won't bother them a bit. In fact, according to their belief, they believe they'll be helping these people. And in reality, they will. Because those people will transcend this physical state while they're prisoned here living forever. I feel sorry for them, because those of us who will eventually die will transcend the pain and the suffering that goes along with this world.
Mm-hmm.
And they're so egotistical that they preserve whatever they do so that the diligent can find out what kind of men these men really are. For instance, the Kennedy assassination, I've been showing a film for 5 years that shows exactly who did it. I show you exactly where Oswald is on the film. He wasn't even on the 6th floor. He was standing in the doorway of the book depository building watching the motorcade go by. And it's incredible.
At the same time, you said they would have everybody renounce religion.
Yes.
Have they as well been using it as a tool for their means?
If you're a Christian, you'll be required to renounce Christ and join the New World Religion. Now remember I told you before, that no matter what your religion is or what you think, they're following the scenario in the book of Revelations to a T, right down to the last little bit. If you want to know what's going to happen in the future, if we don't wake up, and through the power of those, see, not one drop of blood ever has to be spilled, and no one has to ever put any chains on their legs or their arms, ever. If people just wake up and exercise what was given to us in our Constitution, the power of the vote, while we still have that power.
So you say there is still a possibility for like one individual watching this tape to actually make a difference?
You better believe it.
How
Yes.
would that be so?
Well, number one, learn what the truth really is. Get away from the fantasy that you've been living. Educate other people, those you know, your family. Once that begins to happen, it spreads. And then if the people decide that they don't want what they have in store for us planned, just through the power of the vote, they can make this country and the world whatever they want it to be. Whatever they want it to be. And there are no limits on that, except to understand that you can never make everything all right, and you can never make everything all bad. Both must exist, and we must maintain a balance.
Mm-hmm.
And we must become responsible. If each individual on this earth learned to walk in a divine state of grace, responsible for themselves, their family, their city, their state, their country, and for the world,
And to the laws of nature?
and to the laws of nature, and actively participate in solving the problems of yourself, your family, your city, your state, your country, and the world, there could never be a group of men meeting behind closed doors in secret that could ever control anybody. But by abdicating responsibility, by not walking in that divine state of grace, makes possible anyone meeting behind closed doors to bring about the world that they want. And the world that they want may not be the world that you want, or that I want, or that these people watching might want. If you don't participate, you can't complain. If you don't help cook the meal, you got no right to bitch about it. You got to sit down and eat what's put on your plate. If you don't like that, then you should have been in the kitchen helping to prepare the meal, helping to plan it, helping to prepare it, helping to serve it. If you want to sit on your butt in the living room while somebody else prepares the meal for you and decides what it's going to be and puts it on the table, it's too late to say that's not what you wanted to eat. It's too late to say it's not cooked the way you wanted it to cook.
Well, that's very simple to understand. And
that's right. You got to eat it because you have to eat to live. And I think that anybody can understand the meaning behind that little story.
Okay, let's take a step back to the Kennedy thing now.
This is all about the Kennedy.
Well, yeah, it is. But just specifically about, once again, I want to bring up the film as well. Another thing that came to my mind when I viewed it is that the two Secret Service men, the driver and the person sitting next to him in the front, regardless of what they claim happened, obviously did not operate in a way that you were trained as a Secret Serviceman to protect the president. Shouldn't they have just driven that car right out of there, and the other guy should have done something to protect or look for who's shooting? You know, it just didn't seem to make any sense. How would the Warren Commission not? They didn't see the film, so I guess
they didn't see the film by design, because if they saw the film, they'd have to be responsible for the decision that they made that Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone assassin.
Okay.
So I think they didn't see the film on purpose because they didn't want to have to be responsible for saying, "Hey, look, the driver did it." You know, they didn't want to make that decision. And in a letter that Lyndon Johnson wrote to the Warren Commission, he specifically said in the letter, you must quickly identify Lee Harvey Oswald as acting alone with no conspiracy so that America can get back to business.
Was Lyndon Johnson acting on behalf of this secret society, or was he concerned with...
of course. He had to know all about it and approve of it because he was going to be the new president. And the new president would be in charge of the investigation.
How high up a government official do you have to be before you're briefed of this, you know, the total of all the things that are going on, the reality behind them?
Well, you have to understand that nobody exists on a high level in government who's opposed to the New World Order. Nobody. Our government has literally been infiltrated, and there's a cancer within our government destroying it, eating it, nibbling away at it, hacking off its limbs.
And you said this started in 1945?
1945 was when the overt destruction began to occur, when Truman signed the UN Participation Act and the United Nations Treaty. It actually began long before that, when these secret societies began to infiltrate the government and appoint their members to important posts. Infiltration is easy. If one gets in, he can then appoint and hire others to replace people who are not members below him.
So now we've had over almost 50 years of this going on. At
least. I believe that it started back probably 1913, 1917, when the Federal Reserve Act was passed, when the Council on Foreign Relations became a reality in this country. And you can, by diligent research and study, you can see when it happened, where it happened, who did it, and how it was done. It's apparent. When they say there's no conspiracy, I mean, we talk about a conspiracy. It started out as a conspiracy. But when they say today there's no conspiracy, that's not a lie. It's the truth. They're doing it right out in the open, right under our noses, and we're too stupid to know it, to see it. So it's not a conspiracy now today at all. It's right out in the open. They even published their plans. I mean, here Carter appointed Zbigniew Brzezinski as the National Security Advisor, who just wrote a book before he was appointed declaring himself a Marxist. I mean, you read that book, this man believes in Marxism. This man is a socialist. Not only a socialist, he's an international socialist. He's a globalist. His goal, stated in his book,
Right.
to destroy the sovereignty of nations and bring about a one-world Marxist government.
Now, the Carter administration was one extreme, and then we came into the Reagan administration, yet
Nothing changed.
Nothing changed. What you're saying is that no matter what the political leanings, they seem to be playing the same game.
As long as you're playing their game, it doesn't matter who you vote for, who you put in office. They all belong to the other side. They're in the pockets of the Illuminati. When you quit electing professional politicians, when you quit electing the guy who looks nice on television because he speaks good and he looks like the guy you wanted to marry or something like that, you're playing right into their hands. You know, they made it so impossible for another Abraham Lincoln to get elected to the office of president that it's a wonder that we even have a chance at all. We need to send people to Congress and to government who are going to clean house. Kick all the members of secret societies out of the bureaucracy. Lock them up. Try them for treason. Because they are traitors.
So one thing that may help is term limitations.
We must have term limitations, and it must be only one term. And forget all this nonsense that anybody goes to Washington and don't know what's happening. They don't know what's happening simply because they haven't taken the time as citizens to understand how our government works before they ever go to Washington. You see, it should be a process that starts in infancy. It works its way up, and everybody should be taking part in the government.
Now, if someone came in to office with this kind of knowledge and with this kind of intent to really push these people out, would they not be eliminated immediately?
Not if they have the people behind them, because what the people would do in one fell swoop, in one election, would elect people who've never served in government before, kick the incumbents out, send citizens to Washington. And here's the way it has to be done. You know, right now, you don't even pay your congressman. You know who pays your congressman? The federal democracy of the District of Columbia. The federal government pays your congressman, who's supposed to be representing your state and you. The federal government is a foreign country to your state. Why should he represent you? Not only that, but he moves to Washington, D.C. He maintains a residence here, but he doesn't live here. And as long as you re-elect him, he continues to live in Washington, D.C. forever if you keep re-electing him. So they lose all touch with what's back here. They're paid by a foreign government, the federal government. They're not paid by the sovereign state of Georgia or by you. They have to be paid by you. And they have to live here. They can't move to Washington, D.C. They go to Washington, D.C. for one term. Okay? One term only. When that term's up, they have to come back. And you don't pay them exorbitant funds. You pay them just enough to live on comfortably while they're there. No fancy giant cocktail parties, none of this crap. And you take care of their family. See, they don't take their family either. That's the other clue. They leave their family here where they live. You, the people of Georgia, take care of their family and their business or their farm or whatever it is they have while they're gone. Now do you think they have a vested interest in representing you? They sure would under those conditions. But under the conditions they go under now, they have no interest whatsoever in taking care of you.
Now let's look at the current...
They're taking care of themselves.
The current crop of presidential candidates. Is there anybody even running that represents something that we're talking about here?
No, all of them are New World people. Tsongas, in his book, even everything that he's written touts the New World Order. All of it, right for Tsongas' literature. You're going to see New World Order, New World Order, New World Order, New World Order. Clinton, the governor of Georgia, was selected in 1991 by the Bilderberg, governor of Arkansas, was selected in 1991 by the Bilderberg group in Baden-Baden, Germany, to be the new president of the United States. Remember what happened to Gary Hart? What did he do? He went out on a boat with a woman who wasn't his wife, and he was destroyed. Look at Clinton. What's happened to him? Nothing. The press is on his side. They're helping the guy. You know why? because he was chosen by the people who own the press to be the next president of the United States. Now, I don't know if he will be or not. It's up to the American people.
Mm-hmm.
But if they get their way, he will be. Bush is one of the most heinous criminals that's ever walked on the face of the earth. Bush is the man who's been a CIA agent since his college days. He's a member of the Skull and Bones, the Russell Trust. He was initiated in a casket with a ribbon tied around his genitalia, which symbolizes that he's a priest in the temple of Isis. A pagan, this guy. This man is a member of the mystery schools.
Well, he has the outward appearance of a good Christian, church-going Christian, no?
They do whatever they have to be approved by the people, but in secret, they're not at all. This is a man who practices pagan religious rituals, magic. Doesn't matter what you think of all these things. I'm just telling you, this is what he does in secret.
Mm-hmm.
He is the man who, when he was chief executive officer, when he was president of the offshore division of Zapata Oil, organized and began the first large-scale drug smuggling operations into this country. George Bush is the one responsible for the drugs on the streets. And the war against drugs is not a war against drugs, it's a war against the Bill of Rights. And we've already lost the Fourth Amendment in this war.
That's true.
And we're going to lose everything else. You watch on, it amazes me, people watch on Saturday night, cops, top cops, tough cops, 911. All of these stories that are glorifying the police state, and they're falling right into the manipulation as they watch police with no search warrant, with no court order, break down people's doors, tear out their walls, rip open their mattresses. All in the name of the war on drugs.
Pretty sneaky.
It's pretty sneaky, all right. You see them stop people in the streets, and the guy's got $400 in his pocket. They don't press any charges. They didn't even have any reasonable suspicion to stop the person and search him. And what do? They take their money, and they don't give it back. And America's watching this. And the stupid idiots, yes, you stupid idiots, you sit there and watch it, not realizing that when you take away that man's freedom, you've also taken away your own. You see, because they can do the same thing to you. Just because you talk a way that they don't like you talking, or because you wear red shoes and they don't like red shoes, they can do the same thing to you. And under the new law, without a court order, without a search warrant, they can break down your door, they can rip open your mattresses, your couches, your walls, they can trash your house. All in the name of the war on drugs. And let's say they don't like the color of your shoes. All they have to do is drop a little pouch of cocaine in your living room, behind your couch, and find it and say, aha, you're a drug dealer. What happens then? Now they can confiscate your house, all your possessions, all your property, all your bank accounts, all your cars, boats, vacation cottages, whatever you have, and they can auction it off within 24 hours without ever even pressing charges against you. Without a court order, without due process, without just compensation. And there's not a damn thing that you can do about it. Not a damn thing.
At least right now.
At least right now. And the reason you can't do a damn thing about it is because you're the one who brought it about through your stupidity. You're mentally crippled. You're operating from a position of ignorance, apathy, abdication, irresponsibility. And we're losing our country, our freedoms, everything.
Now, these are strong accusations of the American public. What do you hope to accomplish by angering the very audience that you want to watch and listen to you?
Go prove me wrong. Go make me the idiot. In so doing, you're going to find out what the truth is, and maybe you'll wake your up. And if you do, maybe we can save our country. Because I don't really care at this point whether you get mad at me or not. My country's disappearing. My freedoms are disappearing. My daughter's going to live as a slave in the New World Order if you people don't wake up and help me. So, if I had a 2x4, literally, I would smack you upside the head with it. I don't care if you get mad at me. It's beyond that state. You know, I'm willing to put my life on the line. Why would I care if you get mad at me?
Mm-hmm.
You know? people say, well, don't you feel threatened? Don't you feel like your life is in danger? Are you kidding? You're the people who sent your sons and daughters to fight an illegal, immoral, unjustified war in the Middle East? And that didn't bother you a bit that they might have got killed over there, and you're worried that I might get hurt or killed right here, really defending my country? Really fighting in defense of the Constitution?
Right. You brought up the Persian Gulf War. That's something that's still on a lot of people's minds. Based on what you're saying, what was the reason for that war?
They should feel really guilty. They should feel really bad about that.
I mean, what about a Saddam Hussein that everyone seems to agree is you know, the evil man here, that we had the right to go in and punish, destroy, or whatever?
Well, it's funny that the man who purported to want to destroy Saddam Hussein was the man who really built Saddam Hussein when he was in the Central Intelligence Agency. We have been building up Saddam Hussein's arsenal. His technology comes from us in the Soviet Union. We built him up to create that war. We did it for a purpose, and the purpose was, look at this, if George Bush knew what he was doing, how come he didn't know what he was doing? Here's what he said. We've got to send troops to the Middle East because we can't afford to pay $26 a barrel for oil. That's on tape. Next he comes out and he says, no, it's not about the price of oil. It's because Saddam Hussein's not going to stop at Kuwait. He's going to go into Saudi Arabia, and those are our friends, our buddies. So we got to go defend Saudi Arabia. And then James Baker says in a press conference, nope, it's not about Saudi Arabia. It's not about $26 a barrel for oil. It's about jobs. Folks, we're going to get you a job, and to do it, we're willing to kill your sons and daughters. Yes, sir, we'll send them off to get killed so that you can have a job. Prosperity. That's what it's all about.
Well, what was the actual scenario if we hadn't have gone in?
Well, see, that's not the end of it yet. Then George Bush comes out and says, whoa, the White House is flooded for telegrams. They don't want their sons and daughters to get killed for a job. It's not about jobs. It's about naked aggression. Yes, sir, there's a little Hitler over there called Saddam Hussein.
Yeah,
and we're going to go destroy him because the world doesn't need another Hitler. Never mind Pinochet in Chile, who's another Hitler. Never mind all the other Hitlers in the world. Never mind Tiananmen Square.
Well, then, you know, then people would say, well, the American government's not interested in that because money is not in you know, it's the oil here. We're talking about money.
No.
So you're saying it's not even that.
No. They've been planning this war for years. In fact, Arco Press wrote a book about it. The name of the book is Rapid Deployment Forces. It was published in 1985. It names Kuwait as the country. It talks about Operation Bright Star, where they've been practicing the war every year since the early 80s, sending troops over there practicing the war, liberating Kuwait. It's even named in the book. The whole thing was spelled out years ago. What it was all about was to establish the New World Order. You see, because for the first time in the history of the world, it's established the legal international precedent that the United Nations could pass a resolution and send its police force to enforce that resolution, and that the member nations would have to pay for that action. And George Bush said it very clearly, but nobody was listening when he said, no longer will any nation stand against a world united. And with that action, he established the legal foundation in international law that the United Nations is now legally and overtly the one world government, and that the United States military forces and the other forces that were sent by other countries were established as the one world police force under the United Nations. Have you seen the new Air Force uniforms yet? Nowhere on them does it say United States or U.S. They are United Nations uniforms. Go look at them.
What role in the Middle East, again, does Israel play in this?
Israel was created as the instrument to bring about the Battle of Armageddon and the fulfillment of prophecy, a war that will be so terrible, where nuclear weapons will be used, so that the American citizens and the other people in the world will get down on their knees and beg for no more war. And what is the answer to that? They're going to be told the only way we can guarantee no more war is if we destroy the sovereignty of nations and we come together as one humanity in a one world government.
Right.
Now I'm telling you, unless the American people wake up and stop it, starting in about 1996, the Battle of Armageddon will become a reality. Not because two nations got mad at each other and decided to fight. And that's why Saddam Hussein was not destroyed. He will be the instrument that will bring that to pass.
Right. Yeah, they purposely did not go in and do that.
Saddam Hussein will be portrayed as the Antichrist. Babylon is in Iraq. Read the book of Revelations. Whether you believe in the book or not, read it, because the men who are bringing this about are using it as their script.
Well, the UN did indeed charter Israel as a sovereign nation. They were the ones who created this state.
That is correct. It was really created by Great Britain and the United States, with the United States being the major instigant.
Okay, and the Jewish people were then being manipulated into believing it was for some other reason.
That's correct. They've always been manipulated. And I get people who still come to me all the time and say, Bill, you're all wrong. It's the Jews. The Jews are subverting the world. Man, it's not the Jews. It's not the Catholics. It's not the blacks. It's these men who belong to the ancient mystery schools, who meet in secret and decide the fate of the world. And they belong to all different races and all different nationalities and all different religions to the public point of view. But in secret, it's a different story.
How about the European community? Here seems, based on your theory, another group of sovereign nations coming together to form one government.
The European community, the EEC, was created by the Central Intelligence Agency, working through a lodge in Italy called the P2 Lodge. Propaganda 2 is the name of it, which is the intelligence arm of the Vatican, and Prince Bernard, who is the leader of the secret World Council that controls these secret societies around the world, called the Bilderberg Group. And that's the truth of the matter.
And well, during its creation, they just threw out Margaret Thatcher. She was really opposing this.
Yes, she was, and that's why she got ousted.
Okay.
So did the Shah of Iran. So did Marcos. Anyone who opposes it gets ousted. That wasn't an overthrow of Marcos by the people in the Philippines. It was organized, instigated, and carried out by agents of the Central Intelligence Agency and the KGB. The overthrow of the Shah of Iran, our intelligence community is trying to tell us they didn't know anything about it. They didn't know what was happening. Bullshit. They organized it. They instigated it. They are the ones who caused it to come to pass. You see, because we didn't have a National Security Agency or a Central Intelligence Agency before the UN Participation Act was signed. And these organizations were created to bring about the one world government, the New World Order. And it had to be done in a manner that the people would not know that it was being done, and the only way they could do that was hide it behind the veil of national security. And the Cold War was a manipulation maintained to bleed the people of tax dollars to fund the creation of the police force of the New World Order, which is the Army, Navy, and Air Force and Marines of the United States and the Soviet Union. And the people didn't rise up in the Soviet Union and overthrow communism. It came from the top down because it had to be done. There has to be a bringing to the same level of all the peoples of the world to approximately the same political viewpoint, so there's not big disparity in order to be able to justify the merger of all these countries together.
Well, who now is ruling the forces of the former Soviet Union? You have Yeltsin in now. Gorbachev supposedly went down, but we're not sure about that.
Well, let me tell you this. From the beginning, there was never any war between the United States and the Soviet Union. It was created by those at the top to fund the New World Order and the New World Order's police force. At the highest levels of all countries, they all belong to the same club. And we, the people, sit back and we watch this grand drama which is being played out for our benefit, not theirs. If it wasn't for us, they wouldn't even have to do any of this. But you see, they just can't come out and destroy all of us because they need slaves. They need people to make their shoes and make their cars and mine the ore. They need worker bees, and that's what we are. In the New World Order, we will be the worker bees, the slaves.
So the Orwellian view of the vision of the future wasn't too far off based on this scenario.
George Orwell was just like me. He was a low-level member of British intelligence who was appointed to a position high enough where he saw the same documents that I saw. And he tried to warn the world just like I'm trying to warn the world, only he wasn't willing to take the risk that I'm willing to take. So he wrote it in a book called 1984 and spelled out exactly what's coming as a warning to the people of the world, as a work of fiction. But you notice that that work of fiction really stirred people up because they knew that it wasn't fiction. In their heart of hearts, everyone who's read that book knows that it's coming.
It's a possibility.
Most people won't recognize it overtly or publicly, because then, if they recognize it, they have to be responsible to do something about it, and that's what every one of you have been resisting all your life, is being responsible to do something about it, to get involved. That's why you'll walk away from a girl being raped on the street by a gang of thugs rather than go and try to help her. And I'm not talking to all of you. I know there's some of you out there just like me, but most of you are just exactly what I've just described. Most people are no better than animals who do not have intelligence because they don't use their intelligence. And to these men who control things behind the scenes, you are stakes on the table by choice and consent, and will always be ruled and manipulated and enslaved by people who do use their brains.
As long as we're debunking some myths, because it's putting pieces of this puzzle together, I think, for a lot of people that may be watching. The hostage situation in Iran that got Carter out of office, is this another orchestration? And if so, how does it fit into the
October surprise is no myth. There was a deal made. There was a deal made at the highest levels to keep the hostages until after Reagan was elected. Do you really believe that it was an accident, that it was a coincidence, that 30 minutes after Ronald Reagan was sworn in, took his oath of office, the hostages were released?
Did they want Carter out?
Are you really that naive? I can't believe it.
Did they want Carter out?
Yes, they wanted Carter out. They wanted Carter out.
He wouldn't play by the rules? Or what?
I don't know why they wanted him out, but they wanted him out. Carter was ineffective. He did not have the support of all the American people. They need people who can manipulate the American people so that they have their support. My message is to you is don't support anybody unless they're doing what we know to be right. Don't believe them. Don't fall for the manipulations. Double check everything they say.
And that means you can't rely on the media as it is today either.
Oh, of course not. All the media in this country, radio, television, and print, is all owned by 5 corporations. All of these corporations that own the media are owned and controlled, and members of the Council on Foreign Relations sit on their board of directors.
Can you name those 5 corporations? Is that...
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I could try, but I don't want to take a chance on being inaccurate. But you can trace that yourself.
Okay.
Remember, if you go down and you trace the ownership of a station or a newspaper, and you get to a corporation, remember that somebody owns that corporation, and it's usually another corporation. But when you trace the interlocking of all these things, when you get to the top, there's 5. And all journalists know that there's some things you don't write about and you don't talk about because you'll lose your job. And that's where the control is. And that's why they pay anchormen like Dan Rather $2 million a year, because he doesn't question them. He knows that if he goes against them, he's going to lose $2 million a year. Do you think a man that looks pretty and sits in front of a TV camera for the 6 o'clock news is worth $2 million a year? No way. I don't care how long he works, and I don't care what he does. There is no job worth $2 million a year. That's why they pay athletes these fantastic salaries. I was listening to the radio the other day. They just contracted to pay one player on one team $6 million a year. Can you believe this?
And why is that?
It's the Roman circus. What does the emperor do when the people become restive, and when the people are asking questions, and when the people don't like the policies of the emperor? He sends them to the circus. He creates a circus. He builds a giant coliseum. And he begins to throw the Christians to the lions. And he has great chariot races and football games and basketball games, all to keep the idiots preoccupied with things that don't mean anything in the scheme of the entire world, so that they don't have the time to learn what the truth is, so they don't ever get smart enough to learn how they're being manipulated, so they don't ever question the emperor. That's why they pay a player on a football team or a baseball team $1 million or $2 million or $3 million a year. It is the Roman circus. I know men who don't know anything in the world except who plays third base for the Mets. And they think that's a great accomplishment. And they meet and pat each other on the back and bond and go have cocktails and talk about what this guy that plays third base for the Mets did in last night's game. Sad. It's really sad.
Is there any room in a kind of society where these manipulations are not taking place for this type of entertainment or any type of entertainment at all?
If people understand that a game is a game, if people understand that nobody, no matter what they do, is worth paying $2 or $3 million a year for, people should be able to get rich if they want to, by the sweat of their individual labor, okay? By going out and doing something for the world, not by taking people's minds away from the emperor. It's a game. Football's a game. Football's a game. But let me tell you something. When 150 of the most powerful men and women in the world can meet in secret in Baden-Baden, Germany, and plot the fate of billions, and nobody even cares about it, but 6 football players go to lunch together, and it's in the headlines across the country, you have a reflection of the society in which that exists. And it is a sick, sick society that is doomed to self-destruction.
So based on that scenario, there's some truth into what these men are looking at.
Absolutely, and that's what makes me so sick, is that I'm trying to wake up a people who on a daily basis are proving the ones that I'm warning them about to be right.
Well, so that even though a minority, there are people out there that you recognize are awake to this, if they don't do something about it, they will lose that ability to be free in that way.
That's correct.
Whether they might think, well, I don't need to worry about it because I know what I know and I'm fine.
That's
it
right.
doesn't work that way. There's a connection here to everything.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. A nation of people who are willing to send their sons and daughters that they profess that they love to a foreign country to die, and they use the excuse to themselves that they're sending them off to defend our country, and they know damn well that's a lie, are doomed.
It's funny, there's a parable, you said Ben Franklin earlier was even a part of this.
Yes.
A parable of Ben Franklin, I don't know if you're familiar with it. He paid too much for the whistle. He came up when he was a young boy. Are you familiar with that parable?
No, go ahead.
When he was a young boy, he was given an allowance. And, you know, it was a decent amount of allowance. And he was going to the store to get a toy. You know, he was very excited about that. And along the way, he met some boys who had this whistle. You know, and he saw that, and he saw the little boys blowing this whistle, and he thought, wow, the greatest whistle. This is the greatest toy. He really wanted this thing. So without asking, he gave all his money away, you know, to these boys for this whistle. And he went home, and sure enough, he got very bored with it, and he had no more money to buy something that was really, you know, worthwhile to him.
Sure.
And so from that point on, he had a saying that said, you know, don't pay too much for the whistle. And I think somehow that relates here.
He's also the one, when the Constitutional Convention was finished, when they wrote the Constitution and signed it, when it had been signed, he walked out the doors. Someone outside, I forget who it was, I believe it was a reporter for one of the newspapers in the 13 colonies, asked him, said, what have you wrought, Ben? Ben looked at him and he said, a republic, if you can keep it. He knew.
He did.
And that's a good place to end.
Yeah, I think so.
That's a great ending.
Wow.
Good job, guys.
All right,
Bill?
Bill.
Yo.
Fantastic.
Good.
Thanks, Bill.
Where's your towel?
Right there.
I'm about ready
These lights are roasting me.
Man.
to kill.
I've already had my son. I'm ready for a bath.